My wife died giving birth. I refused the baby. This baby is a curse. Get her out of my life. I wouldn't even hold her, signed adoption papers, and walked away. 15 years later, I went to a family gathering for my mom's 60th celebration. I walked in and my blood boiled. Standing there was. The nurse held her out to me and I stepped back. Physically stepped back. Like she was offering me something on fire. Sir, your daughter, she needs skin to skin. No. The word came out flatter than I expected. Not angry. Not broken. Just done. The fluorescent lights in the hallway buzzed above my head, and somewhere behind the double doors they were still working on Sarah. Except they weren't working on Sarah anymore, were they? Because someone had already told me. A doctor. Or maybe a resident. I couldn't remember his face, just the shape of his mouth when he said it. Hemorrhage. Complications. Everything they could. And then silence. And then crying, not mine. The baby's. The nurse shifted the bundle in her arms, unsure. She was young. Probably hadn't dealt with this before. A father refusing to hold his newborn 20 minutes after his wife bled out on the table. Mr. Garrett. I said no. My brother-in-law Marcus was somewhere in the waiting room. Sarah's mother was on her way from the airport. My own mother had called 3 times. I hadn't answered any of them. I was standing in a hospital corridor at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October, and my wife was dead, and someone was trying to hand me the reason. I know how that sounds. I knew how it sounded then. But when your brain stops processing grief and starts processing cause and effect, you don't get sad first. You get clear. Horribly, sickeningly clear. Sarah hadn't wanted to get pregnant again. We'd lost one before, early, at 9 weeks, and it had gutted her. We'd agreed to wait. And then it happened anyway, the way it does, and she'd been scared the entire time. Not excited, scared. Scared. The kind where she'd sit on the edge of the bathtub at 3 in the morning staring at nothing, and I'd find her there and neither of us would say a word because we both knew what she was thinking. The pregnancy was rough from day one. Gestational diabetes. Preeclampsia starting at 28 weeks. Her doctor suggested a scheduled C-section at 37 weeks and Sarah said yes immediately because she wanted it over with. She wanted to be safe. She wanted us both to come out the other side. She didn't come out the other side. And now there was a baby in a nurse's arms, screaming in that thin, furious way newborns do, and I couldn't look at her. Not wouldn't, couldn't. Every sound that kid made was the sound of the thing that killed my wife. I walked away. Not dramatically. Not running. I just turned and went down the hall toward the elevators and pushed the button and stood there and waited. The nurse didn't follow me. I think she was too stunned. Marcus found me in the parking garage 20 minutes later, sitting in the driver's seat of my truck with the engine off. Hey. He opened the passenger door and sat down without asking. They're saying you wouldn't hold her. That's right. Derek, she's Sarah's daughter. She's also the reason Sarah's not alive. He didn't say anything for a long time. The concrete around us amplified every sound, a car starting 3 levels up, someone's heels clicking toward the stairwell. Marcus was a good guy. Married to Sarah's sister, Claire. He'd always been the measured one at family events, the guy who diffused things with a joke. He wasn't joking now. You need to come back upstairs. No, I don't. The baby needs a mother. She doesn't have one. And she's not going to have a father either. He stared at me. You can't mean that. Marcus, I'm not in shock. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and change my mind. I don't want her. I can't want her. Every time I look at that kid I'm going to see the last 45 minutes of my life in that waiting room. That's not something that goes away. People say things when they're grieving. I'm not saying things. I'm telling you what's going to happen. He sat with that for a while. Then he said, Claire's upstairs. She's holding the baby. Good. She can keep holding her. Derek. I'm going home. I'll handle the rest of what needs handling. The funeral, the paperwork, the house. But I'm not raising that child. I want that understood now, tonight, before anyone builds expectations. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Then he got out of the truck. He leaned back in before shutting the door. Sarah would hate this. Sarah's dead, Marcus. She doesn't get a vote. I drove home to a house that still smelled like the lavender candles she'd burned that morning. Her coffee mug was on the counter. Her slippers were by the couch. The nursery door was open at the end of the hallway. We'd spent 2 weekends painting it pale yellow, assembling the crib, hanging that stupid mobile with the felt elephants she'd found at a craft fair. I walked past the nursery and closed the door without going in. The next 3 days were mechanical. I selected a casket. I approved a death certificate. I met with our attorney, Brian Kelleher, who'd done our wills 2 years ago and who looked at me like I'd sprouted a second head when I told him what I wanted. You want to relinquish parental rights? Yes. Derek, you're 4 days out from. I know exactly how many days out I am. I want to sign the papers. Brian leaned back in his chair. He was in his 60s, wore reading glasses on a chain around his neck, had a photo of his own grandkids on his desk. He wasn't going to understand this. Nobody was going to understand this. I wasn't asking anyone to understand it. There's a process, he said carefully. In this state, you can't just sign away your rights unless there's a step-parent adoption or a pending adoption by another party. Otherwise, the state treats the child as yours regardless. Then find me an adoption agency. Or a family. Or whatever needs to happen. I want the process started today. There's usually a waiting period. Cooling off period. The courts. Brian. Start the process. He looked at me for a long time over those glasses. Then he nodded and pulled a legal pad out of his drawer. The phone calls started that night. My mother first. Derek Michael Garrett, you tell me right now that what Claire told me isn't true. It's true, Ma. You are not abandoning that baby. I'm making sure she goes to a family that can actually take care of her. You are her family. You are her father. Biologically. That's all. That is not all, and you know it. Sarah would never. Everyone keeps telling me what Sarah would want. Sarah wanted to live. She didn't get that. I don't see why the rest of her hypothetical wishes should carry any more weight. My mother was crying. I could hear it through the phone, that ragged breathing she did when she was trying to hold it together. I'd heard it when my father left. I'd heard it when my grandmother died. Now she was directing it at me, and I understood it was supposed to change something. It didn't. You're going to regret this for the rest of your life, she said. Maybe, but I'm going to do it anyway. She hung up on me. First time in my life. Sarah's mother, Linda, came to the house the next day. She'd been staying with Claire and Marcus, helping with the baby. She stood in my kitchen with that look on her face, the one where she's about to say something she considers deeply important and expects you to receive it like a sermon. That little girl looks exactly like Sarah. I don't care. She has her nose. She has her. Linda. I'm not going to fall in love with a baby piece of bone structure. I'm sorry. I know that's not what you want to hear. What I want to hear is that my daughter didn't die for nothing. That one landed. I'll give her that. It hit somewhere in the center of my chest and sat there like a stone. But I'd already made my decision, and a well-placed guilt trip wasn't going to undo it. If anything, it confirmed what I already knew. Everyone was going to try to use Sarah's memory to manipulate me into keeping this child. And I was going to let them try, and it was going to fail, and eventually they'd stop. She didn't die for nothing, Linda. The baby's alive. She's going to be alive with a family that wants her. We want her. Then adopt her. You and Claire. I'll consent. She blinked. That clearly wasn't the response she'd expected. She'd come prepared for resistance, not permission. You're serious. Dead serious. If you want to raise her, I'll make it easy. Brian can draw up the papers. I'll sign whatever needs signing. You want her? Take her. All I'm asking is that I'm not part of it. Linda left without saying another word. But I already knew what was going to happen, because I knew Claire, and I knew Marcus, and I knew that family. They weren't going to let that baby go to strangers. 10 days after Sarah died, Claire and Marcus filed a petition for adoption. Brian handled my side. I signed the consent to terminate parental rights in his office on a Thursday afternoon. The pen felt like any other pen. The paper looked like any other paper. The clerk who notarized it asked me to state my full name and date of birth, and I did, and then it was done. I never held her. Not once. I never learned what they named her. I told Brian explicitly that I didn't want to know. I told my mother I didn't want to know. I told Claire, in the one conversation we had about logistics, that I didn't want updates, photos, milestones, any of it. Clean break. Claire had looked at me like I was a stranger. Not with anger exactly. More like bewilderment. Like she was trying to square the man she'd known for 8 years at Thanksgivings and birthday parties with the man sitting across from her saying he wanted nothing to do with his own daughter. You don't even want to know her name? She asked. No, Derek, what if someday she wants to know you? Then you can tell her whatever you think is appropriate. Tell her I wasn't capable. Tell her I wasn't well. Tell her I died. I genuinely don't care. Just don't bring her to me. The adoption was finalized 4 months later. I received the court order in the mail, confirming the termination. I read it once, put it in a file cabinet, and closed the drawer. Then I did what people do when they remove the center of their life. I filled the space with other things. I sold the house. Couldn't stay there with the yellow nursery and the lavender candles and the ghosts of every plan we'd ever made. I bought a condo downtown, smaller, no yard, no room for anyone but me. I worked. I worked insane hours. I was a project manager for a commercial construction firm. And I volunteered for every job no one else wanted, the ones in other cities, the ones that ran through holidays, the ones that kept me in a hard hat and steel toes from 6 in the morning until 9 at night. I ate alone. I slept alone. I dated, eventually, but nothing that lasted. Nothing I wanted to last. My mother and I went through a cold period. 2 years, roughly, where our phone calls were monthly and polite and about nothing. She didn't bring up the baby. I didn't ask about family events I was clearly no longer invited to. Claire and Marcus became a separate branch of whatever our family tree was. They existed on the other side of a wall I'd built, and nobody tried to climb over it. That suited me fine. Years passed the way they do when you're not paying attention to them. I got a promotion. Then another one. I bought a nicer condo. I took up woodworking, which is about the most cliché bachelor hobby imaginable, but it kept my hands busy and my head empty. I had a girlfriend for about a year, Rachel, an architect, smart, funny, no interest in kids. We split when she took a job in Denver. I didn't try to make it work because making things work required a level of investment I no longer had the wiring for. Occasionally I'd think about Sarah. Not every day anymore. Not even every week. But sometimes, when the light hit a certain way, or I heard a song from the year we met, or I smelled lavender in a store, I'd feel that trap door open under me for half a second before I caught myself. I trained myself to catch it fast. Feel it, acknowledge it, close it. Move on. I didn't think about the baby. That wasn't an act or a discipline. She simply didn't exist in my mind. I'd sealed that door so thoroughly that it wasn't a door anymore. It was a wall. There was no baby. There was only Sarah, and then no Sarah, and then the life I built after. 15 years. 15 years is a long time to maintain a wall. Long enough that you forget it's even there. Long enough that when someone sends you an invitation to your mother's 60th birthday party, you look at it and think, yeah, okay. I should go. I should be there. My mother and I had thought out over the decade. Not all the way. We were never going to be what we were before. But we talked on the phone every couple of weeks. I sent her flowers on her birthday, and she'd stop mentioning things designed to make me feel guilty. She was getting older. Her knees were bad. She'd sold the house I grew up in and moved to a smaller place closer to my brother Tom, who lived out in the suburbs with his wife and 3 kids. I saw Tom regularly. He'd never judged me for the adoption, or if he had, he'd kept it to himself. We were close in the way that brothers who don't talk about important things are close: fishing trips, football games, beers on his back deck. The invitation came from Tom. A Saturday afternoon gathering at his house. 40, maybe 50 people. Family, friends, neighbors. My mother's whole social circle. Tom's wife Jeannie was handling the food. A caterer was doing the rest. Simple, casual. Just show up, bring a bottle of something nice, say nice things about Ma. I bought a $60 bottle of bourbon and a card, put on a decent shirt, and drove out to the suburbs. The party was already in full swing when I got there. Tom's house sat on a big corner lot with a wraparound porch and one of those backyards that suburban guys pour their souls into. The perfect lawn, the patio, the fire pit, the string lights. 40 or so people were spread out between the backyard and the main floor, and I could hear the noise from the driveway. Laughter, music, a couple of kids shouting. Normal stuff. I came through the front door because the side gate was blocked by a catering van. Jeannie hugged me in the foyer, took the bourbon, pointed me toward the kitchen where Tom was arranging cheese boards like a man who'd watched too many YouTube tutorials. I clapped him on the shoulder, grabbed a beer, and made my way toward the backyard to find my mother. That's when I stopped. The living room was a pass-through to the back, big, open, with French doors leading to the patio. There were people everywhere, holding drinks, talking in clusters, kids weaving between legs. And there, standing by the fireplace, talking to my mother, was Claire. I hadn't seen Claire in years. That was fine. That was expected, even. We existed in different orbits now. But Claire wasn't the reason I stopped. Standing next to Claire was a girl. 15, maybe. Tall for her age, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt and that particular brand of self-conscious posture that teenagers have when they're at a party full of adults and trying to look comfortable. She was talking to my mother. No, she was listening, nodding, the way you do when a grandmother is telling you something she considers very important. And I knew. I knew because she had Sarah's face. Not in the vague way that people say babies look like their parents. In the specific, devastating way that made the room go sideways for a second. The nose. The jawline. That exact set of the mouth that Sarah used to get when she was concentrating. I was looking at my wife standing in my brother's living room, and she was 15 years old, and she was alive. My blood didn't boil. That's too simple. What happened was more like every wall I'd built over 15 years started vibrating at a frequency I couldn't control. I could feel it in my chest, this pressure, this thing I'd sealed away cracking open without my permission. I turned to find Tom. He was still in the kitchen, sawing at a block of cheddar with a butter knife. Tom. He looked up. Read my face. Set the knife down. I can explain. What is she doing here? It wasn't a question. He heard that. Ma invited Claire and Marcus. Derek, it's Ma's birthday, she wanted everyone. Everyone. Including, I couldn't even say it. That girl. Tom lowered his voice. Her name is Lily. She's 15. She's Claire and Marcus's daughter, legally and in every way that matters. And she's Ma's granddaughter. Ma wanted her here. And nobody thought to tell me. We didn't think you'd come if we told you. There it was. The honest answer. He had the decency to look a little ashamed of it, at least. You're right, I said. I wouldn't have. Derek, come on. It's been 15 years. She doesn't even know who you are. To her, you're just some guy. She calls Marcus Dad. She doesn't know any different. I told all of you, every single one of you, that I didn't want this. You said you didn't want updates. You didn't want photos. You didn't want to be part of it, fine. You haven't been. But Ma is 60, and she wanted her family together, and Lily is part of her family. That's not about you. He was right about that last part, and I hated him for being right. This wasn't a setup designed to hurt me. This was my mother wanting her granddaughter at her birthday party. The fact that I happened to also be there was, from their perspective, a logistical problem they decided to solve by not telling me. I took a long pull from my beer and set it on the counter. I'm leaving. Don't, Tom. If you leave now, Ma will know why. And it'll break her heart on her birthday. Just stay on the other side of the house. I'll keep things separated. You don't have to talk to her. You don't have to look at her. Just stay for an hour and then go. I stared at him. My brother, with his cheese board and his string lights and his neat suburban life, trying to broker a truce between me and a reality I'd spent a decade and a half outrunning. 1 hour. 1 hour. I went out the back door and found a spot near the fire pit where I could see my mother through the crowd. She was in her element, laughing, touching people's arms, doing that thing where she pulls you in close to tell you something conspiratorial and then cackles at her own joke. She looked good. Older, sure, her hair fully silver now, but good, happy. I watched her for a while. I talked to a couple of Tom's neighbors I vaguely recognized. I ate a mini quiche and talked to Jeannie's sister about the property market like I actually cared about mortgage rates. I was running out the clock, and I was almost home free. Then the back door opened and the girl came out. She walked right past me, not even glancing in my direction, heading for the drink table where there was a cooler full of sodas and sparkling water. She grabbed a can of something, cracked it open, and stood there surveying the backyard with that particular teenage appraisal, ranking everything on a scale of boring to tolerable. She was maybe 10 feet from me. Close enough that I could see the freckles across her nose, Sarah's freckles, Sarah's exact pattern, and the way she pushed her hair behind her ear with her left hand, left-handed. Sarah was left-handed. You're Derek, right? I flinched. She was looking right at me, casual. No weight to it at all. What? Tom's brother. You're Derek. She said it the way you'd identify a character in a family story you'd heard enough times to have memorized but never bothered to verify. Yeah, cool. I'm Lily. She took a sip of her drink. Mom said you might be here. She said you're, like, really private. Really private. That was what Claire had told her. Not, this is the man who refused to hold you. Not, this is your biological father who signed you away. Really private. That was generous. More generous than I deserved. Yeah, I said. Something like that. Okay, well, Grandma Jean wants everyone in the backyard for a toast soon. She sent me to round up stragglers. She grinned. Sarah's grin. The one that started in the corner of her mouth and worked its way across. And then she turned and went back inside. I stood there. I stood there with a half-empty beer and the sound of 40 people laughing and the smell of grilled food and the string lights swaying in the breeze, and I stood there and understood for the first time that what I'd done 15 years ago wasn't a clean break. It was an amputation. And I was standing in the same yard as the missing limb, and she had freckles and a grin and she'd called my mother Grandma Jean and she didn't know a single thing about me except that I was really private, and that was exactly what I'd wanted, and it was the worst thing I'd ever felt. The toast happened. Tom gave a speech. My mother cried. People raised their glasses. I raised mine. Lily stood next to Claire and Marcus on the other side of the patio, and she leaned her head on Claire's shoulder during the sentimental part, and Claire put her arm around her, and Marcus rubbed her back, and they were a family. A complete, functioning, unbothered family. I put my glass down and went inside. Through the living room, through the foyer, past the catering van, to my truck in the driveway. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, which was apparently my thing, sitting in vehicles in the dark after being confronted with realities I'd constructed entire architectures to avoid. I thought about driving away. That was the pattern. That was what I did. The hospital. The house. The family. Every time the world put that child in front of me, I left. I started the engine. Then I turned it off. Then I started it again. I sat there for maybe 15 minutes, engine running, hands on the wheel, going nowhere. The party noise leaked out through the windows of the house. Someone had turned the music up. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, "You okay?" I didn't answer. Another text, a minute later. "She doesn't know, Derek. She's never going to know from us. You can just be Mom's other son. That's all she sees. Mom's other son." I read that 3 times. Then I turned off the engine, took the keys out, and put them in my pocket. I didn't go back inside. I sat in the truck until the noise started dying down, until cars started leaving, until the string lights went off one by one. I sat there until I saw Claire and Marcus walk out the front door with Lily between them, Lily looking at her phone, Marcus carrying a bag of leftovers, Claire saying something about the drive home. They didn't see me. Or if they did, they didn't acknowledge it. They got in their car and pulled away, and the taillights disappeared around the corner, and that was it. I went back inside to say goodbye to my mother. She was in the kitchen, helping Jeannie wrap up food, tired and glowing the way people do after a party they actually enjoyed. "There's my boy," she said when she saw me. She put her hands on my face the way she's done since I was 5. "Thank you for coming." "Happy birthday, Ma." "Did you meet Lily? She's gotten so tall." There it was. No build-up. No warning. Just my mother, with her hands on my face, asking me if I'd met the child I'd refused to hold. Briefly. "She's got Sarah's face, doesn't she?" "Yeah. She does." My mother looked at me. Really looked at me. Not with judgment. Not with the weight of 15 years of disagreement. Just with the kind of clarity that mothers have when they've been watching their children make decisions for decades and have long since given up trying to redirect them. "She's a good kid, Derek, smart, kind. Funny as hell. Claire and Marcus have done a beautiful job." "I'm glad." "Are you?" "Yes, Ma. I'm glad she's okay." She held my face for another second, then patted my cheek and let go. "Drive safe." I drove home. I parked in my building's garage. I took the elevator to the 14th floor and walked into my condo and stood in the dark for a while. The place was clean, quiet. Exactly the way I'd left it. The woodworking bench in the spare room, the single set of dishes in the cabinet, the bed made tight enough to bounce a quarter off. I'd built this life like a structure. Load-bearing walls, no unnecessary rooms, everything rated for the exact weight I'd chosen to carry and nothing more. For 15 years it had held. Now there was a crack. A hairline fracture running through the foundation, and it had a name and freckles and a grin that started in the corner of her mouth, and it called my mother Grandma Jean, and it didn't know I existed in any meaningful way, and that was my choice, and my choice was permanent, and permanent was the whole point. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. I'd spent 15 years telling myself I'd done the right thing. Not the easy thing, I never pretended it was easy. But the right thing. A child deserved a parent who wanted her. I didn't want her. Giving her to Claire and Marcus, who did want her, was the most rational, responsible decision I could have made under the circumstances. I believed that completely. I defended it to my mother, to Linda, to Brian, to every person who'd looked at me sideways. I defended it with the absolute certainty of a man who had removed the variable and therefore removed the pain. But the variable was a person. She had a name. She stood in backyards drinking sparkling water and grinning at strangers and calling my mother Grandma Jean like it was the most natural thing in the world, because it was, because she'd grown up in it, because Claire and Marcus had given her everything I'd refused to. And the thing I realized, sitting on the edge of my bed at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, was that I hadn't done the right thing. I hadn't done the wrong thing either. I'd done an irreversible thing. And irreversible things don't care whether you were right or wrong. They just sit there, finished, permanent, exactly where you left them. I'd signed the papers. I'd walked away. I'd sealed the wall. And on the other side of that wall, a girl grew up without knowing me, and she was fine, and I was the one who wasn't. I didn't call Claire. I didn't reach out to Marcus. I didn't ask Tom to arrange anything. That would have been selfish, inserting myself into a life I'd voluntarily exited, disrupting a family that had formed around my absence. Lily had a father. She had a mother. She had a grandmother who put her hands on people's faces and told them to drive safe. She had everything she needed. I was the deficit. I was the gap in my own life, not hers. I went to bed. I got up the next morning. I made coffee. I went to the workshop and turned on the lathe and made a bowl out of a piece of walnut I'd been saving, and I didn't think about Sarah's freckles on a 15-year-old girl, and I didn't think about a grin that started in the corner of her mouth, and I didn't think about the word grandma in a voice I'd never heard before that night. I went to work on Monday. I poured concrete and reviewed blueprints and argued with a subcontractor about drainage specs. I came home. I ate. I slept. I did it again. The crack was still there. It was going to be there for a long time. Maybe always. But the structure held. That was the deal I'd made 15 years ago. You don't get to torch something and then complain about the cold.